So be it, Jedi. He's no good to me dead.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
You know what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Star Wars After Hours. I am Stefan Splino.
I'm Josh Combs.
And I'm Josh Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Josh Taylor, our second out-of-house guest from Network 1901. We like those guys. We're very happy to have you on, Josh.
Thanks, man. I appreciate hanging out. And I know it was your first pick. Dale obviously just jumped the gun, but clearly I was the first pick, so that's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
No, Dale was great, but we've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Yeah, this one's a really cool topic, and you have a little bit of a different look at it because now you're living next to Disneyland, basically. So
yeah, I'm a 15-minute walk pretty much to the front gate.
That's pretty awesome.
So Dale's a massive Star Wars nerd, but Josh is Network 1901's Disney buff.
I'm
Correct?
a Disney buff, and more importantly, I think I'm a history buff. So I think I'm more interested in not in the way things used to be, but how we got to now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that really interests me, and I don't know if, not to put down any of the other people at Network 1901, but I don't know if that's anybody else's thing, but that's definitely something that I love. So I think hopefully I bring that to the show.
Yeah, definitely.
You can find Mr. Joshua Taylor on Network 1901. They have different shows. They rotate throughout the week, and you can find them on YouTube at Network 1901.
So the way that it works, we have multiple podcasts all on one feed. So if you subscribe to Network 1901, you get 3 shows a week. Disney Culture Club is on Mondays. Wednesdays, Modern Mouse Radio. And Friday is kind of an ever-changing show. We have kind of miniature series, almost if you think about how television series run, especially in England, right? They always have Sherlock, which is 3 episodes. But that's kind of how we run our podcast feed. We have 3 shows on one feed that you get. So if you don't like Monday's show, that's fine. You can listen every Wednesday. You can listen to me, or whatever. And for Modern Mouse Radio, the way that I kind of describe it is, I present the way that Disney deals with the real world and how the real world kind of deals with Disney. So I take topics in social change and politics and science, technology, all those kinds of things, and I kind of say okay, well, how is Disney reacting to this, or how is the world reacting to Disney? And from there, kind of have serious conversations. Sometimes we have fun conversations. I mean, it's always kind of fun, but sometimes we have silly conversations. But yeah, it's kind of different in that way. And then this coming May, I'm bringing back my World That Never Was series, which is about the things that Disney never built for its theme park division, and kind of asking the reason why, and then kind of focusing in on that reason. The first season of that is at network1901.com, but the second season should be hopefully just as good, or if not better, is my plan.
Yeah, I love the first season of that. What was your what's the upcoming one about? Or have you released that yet?
I have all 6 written down. I won't release all of them. I will tell you. So I'll tell you this: in the first season, I deliberately made it so that the first episode connected with the last episode, which is number 6.
Right.
And it's kind of this overarching thing where you're building to episode 6. In this series, the same thing happens. Episode 6 is going to be about Beastly Kingdom, which is the most requested thing that I got.
Yeah.
After doing it. So I'm going to do Beastly Kingdom, and there will be a connection to that from episode 1. And I'm also going to be doing, which I think is going to be probably my favorite episode that I do, hopefully, will be the Museum of the Weird.
Oh yeah, definitely. That'd be really cool.
from
really
Disneyland. Cool. So we're going to talk about that. And there's going to be 6 episodes in total. But I mean, like, I'm already doing my interviews now. I'm already focusing in on it and trying to like connect the stories and what I want to tell as I'm going along. But I think I've got pretty much episode 1 and 2, all the interviews in the bag. The story I want to tell, I just have to kind of put it together and edit it. And hopefully I'll get everything else done sooner rather than later.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm really interested in the Museum of the Weird because I'm a big Haunted Mansion guy, and I really like Rolly Crump and all the stuff he did. So that's gonna be cool. Awesome.
I'm the same way. And like when I originally started Modern Mouse Radio, I had the opportunity like really early on, which I should not have had, and I kind of regret saying yes to it at the time. But that was when Rolly Crump just put out his book. It was like right when I was starting out with Modern Mouse Radio.
It's kind of a cute story.
It's kind of a cute story, and I got contacted by Jeff Heimbach, who's become a good friend of mine, about having him and Rolly on the show. And I think it was like episode 7 of Modern Mouse Radio. And we started episode 1 not knowing at all what we were doing. Right. And so like by episode 7, we still hadn't figured it out. Like you guys are way much further along than I am.
No, we still have no idea what we're doing.
but like there's like a format, there's like a sense of idea of what the show was about, etc. for you guys. Like literally we didn't know what Modern Mouse Radio was going to be, what we wanted to do with it or anything. And this idea of presenting extremely amazing Imagineer came up, and I was like, yes. And it was the first interview I ever did for Modern Mouse Radio. It's the last time I've ever spoken to an Imagineer.
Your first interview was Rolly Crump.
Yeah, my first interview was Rolly Crump, who designed Small World and Haunted Mansion. He designed some elements in a lot of the other places.
Tiki Room.
The Tiki Room, which is one of my favorite stories about Rolly Crump. And then he told me about how they built the Tower of the Four Winds at the New York Fair. I don't know if it's actually in the episode or not, but this might have been an off thing. But they built the Tower of the Four Winds. They didn't want to bring it back to Disneyland. He didn't like it. So what they did instead was they cut it up into small pieces and threw it into the ocean just outside New York City. Like Perfect. Literally there is pieces of Small World laying in the ocean just off New York City.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. Yeah, it's crazy just what went into stuff back then and then what they did afterwards. They're like, no one wants it. We'll throw it out. But I did see... I did listen to a podcast with him when he said that he didn't like how thick it had to be, but it was because of the winds and stuff in that area. It had to be that thickness, and it's kind of hard to scale things up from, miniatures without any structural integrity. It's got to look completely different, and he wasn't a big fan of the way that it turned out. But he definitely probably didn't consider actual weathering of the piece. So yeah. Can you still listen to those episodes? You can, yeah. If you search for Modern Mouse Radio, either on iTunes or Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you listen, you can find Modern Mouse Radio episode 1 through I think like 130, or maybe like 120. But when we started Network 1901, I felt like it was kind of a clean slate, so I started there. Instead of uploading everything I had, I think we started there at like episode like 105 or something like that. Right. So I wanted it to kind of be almost like the way that I knew the Modern Mouse was at the time, because it probably took me honestly like maybe 70 episodes to figure out what I actually really wanted to do with Modern Mouse Radio. And I had a co-host. My co-host left. And like once he left, I took a couple of months to rethink what it was going to be. And once I was by myself and alone and really thought about it enough, the show progressed into kind of what it is now, which is more of this idea of talking about technology and social issues and politics and religion
kind of mixed with Disney.
Yeah, I do. One of the things that I do appreciate about your show is you're not afraid to dive into kind of social and political issues, because it's all intertwined with Disney and our whole society. And personally, me and Josh have talked about it. I don't ever want to bring politics into our podcast, just because I want it to be for everyone, and it's such a divisive kind of thing right now that I don't ever want to charge it with that,
right?
That inject it with that. But I do appreciate that about you guys, that you're not afraid to tackle some of those touchy hot button issues.
And I think that's one thing that I do well with, is I try and respect both sides of it, whether or not I agree on both sides of an issue. Like this past week I did a whole episode because everybody was really upset about LeFou being gay, where everybody was really into LeFou being gay.
He was gay from the start to me.
Yeah.
If you watch the original cartoon, he's gay.
He's gay. Yeah, totally agree with you. And then the live action film, I went and saw it, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely a gay character. Again, they never tell you straight out that he is, but he is. And I knew the other side of the argument was this kind of conservative Christian thing, where it was okay, a lot of people are upset about him being gay, and not to bring it to your show, because I don't want it to be that way. But I brought on a guy who is a conservative Christian, and we had the conversation. We kind of did this conservative versus progressive discussion, but I tried to stay as neutral as I could, and I try to, even if I don't agree, I try to respect both sides and allow them to talk about what they want to talk about. Because I think that if we don't listen to the other side, then we don't have an argument against it, right? We have to know what we're fighting against to be able to make that argument. And so listening to him, I was like, okay, I really get what you're saying, and I get how your mindset works. Now let me explain mine. And he said, it was the most I guess he said what that interview was to him. He wouldn't have gone on any other show, Disney or not Disney, and had that argument with people. But because he knew that I would respect him, he allowed me to have him on the show and discuss his religion and his conservative views, or in general Christian conservative views. And then I was able to rebuttal, and that would have not had happened had I not been respectful for him. So I think that that's kind of a clear case of what I'm doing is going hopefully down the right path. But I just enjoy what I do.
Yeah, neutrality is a lost art form these days. So
it kind of is. That's very, very true.
Yeah, that's definitely respect that. That's great.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that I would like to see return was something that was my first podcast that I'd ever done, was Armchair Imagineers with you guys.
Yeah, and that was something. So I think I've done 2 more since I had you on, but I only did 3 in all of 2016. When I originally started Modern Mouse Radio, we did Armchair Imagineering, which is this idea of we pick a topic, or we pick a land or a space with a hotel or whatever the case may be. We pick a category, and kind of like what I did with today's show, I tell our guest, whoever it is, okay, cool, if you're going to be on the show, you have to have homework.
Yeah.
And you've got to come up with something interesting to do with your land. It could be anything. There's no monetary situation. You're just, whatever the topic is, that's where you have to kind of fit your thing into. And then myself, Angie, and then whoever our guest is, end up, coming up with these ideas. For you, we went to Tomorrowland knowing that you're kind of a person that loves patents and loves new technology.
Yeah.
And it was cool to go that route. We haven't done any recently just because Angie is so overwhelmed with our business and doing Modern Mouse Boutique and on that side of things. But I would really like to get more back into that and doing one every few months, because It's our signature show for Modern Mouse Radio,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still one of my favorite things to talk about and do.
Yeah, that was really fun. Those are really fun to listen to also. I think I've listened to all of them. I'm pretty sure.
I think there's probably about a dozen of them now.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Over time.
Nice. Yeah, so definitely check out all of Josh's stuff and all the stuff at Network 1901. There's stuff, it's Disney focused, but I know Dale does a lot of really cool Star Wars videos, and you guys usually, I can pick out a segment on the Disney Culture Club. You guys usually talk a little bit about Star Wars.
Yeah, we try to do every show. And like, I'm actually going to, I think this episode in particular, that we're going to get into will actually be something that I take to the parks, and actually start talking about it and divulging about it. And also, as Star Wars Land definitely gets introduced into the parks, I'll be doing a lot more Star Wars Land videos on our YouTube page from the park as well.
Awesome.
Now, speaking of the parks, our little news section today is about something very exciting going on at the parks. Something big, something that shoots at rebels in the Hoth system.
Yes.
Spin it. What is it?
What are we
looking at?
We've got some Imperial Walkers. We have some AT-ATs at Disneyland.
AT-ATs, yeah.
Yes. AT-ATs. I'm going to start off. People giving other people problems about saying AT-AT.
That's how I've always said it.
I've always said
AT-AT.
When I was a kid, I said AT-AT.
Okay.
Let me explain this. I think like when you read it, you think, oh, the word at is in it, right? So at. But, and this I think is the clearest case that you can have for it, is that in any robotic situation, R2-D2 isn't said R2-D2, like it's not like some weird thing. C-3PO is C-3PO. Like anything mechanical, in my mind, has to be completely spelled out.
Yeah, it's like a four-letter acronym. Most of Star Wars is four-letter acronyms. It
can't be something that's like, it's already like weirdly abbreviated, right? Like it's this idea that you're world building, and so AT-AT means something else. Just the same way that like an R2-D2 unit means something. It's not just like a bunch of letters put together. It's like a weird acronym for something else. Yeah. You just don't know. It's the same way that like Chewbacca, you don't know what he's saying. Han does, and he's kind of like giving you the bits and pieces you need to know to keep the story going. But like, it's this idea of show, not tell, where it's like, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know enough to get the story to keep going. You don't need to know what AT-AT means.
Right.
You just need to know that it is that.
It actually means all-terrain armored transport, doesn't it?
Yeah, all-terrain armored transport. But then here's what my argument is. ATST. Atst. Like, how are you supposed to say that? Like, atst. Right. It's all-terrain armored... all-terrain scout transport.
Yeah.
And so... if it's ATST, then I think it's AT-AT. I mean, you could say it any way you want, but no one should say it's wrong. I think the way George Lucas
would want you to say it is AT-AT.
Then I'll say it just as George wants it. Just as he would like to it.
It's unfortunate.
Otherwise, he'll come and hunt you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we never hear, as far as I know, any of the characters in universe, in film, pronounce it.
They say Imperial Walkers.
Is that what they say? Yeah.
Imperial Walkers.
Yeah, they never completely address the abbreviation.
No. Which it doesn't, I mean, it would make sense that they wouldn't, because you never call something by its technical name, usually like colloquially.
What are you trying to say?
Colloquially.
That's true. Usually we always have a nickname for things.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a nickname for something, we usually shorten the name, right? So that's why like Luke calls it R2.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't have a nickname for it. You know, it's not Dave.
Yeah.
You know, like so it's just R2. And then like C-3PO's, it kind of feels like shortened enough, like the syllables of it feel shortened enough that it just
Well, he even cuts out the C though. He calls him 3PO.
Oh yeah,
he yells
3PO.
3PO.
Yeah,
sometimes
true.
it says 3PO. Yeah, or
True.
there's
That makes sense, too.
the Oral Knots version of Star Wars where C-3PO wants to be named Friend Besto.
What?
Yeah, everyone needs to watch that. I'll link it, and I won't talk about it anymore.
No. So what do we know about the AT-ATs? What do we know about the all-terrain armored transports at Disneyland so far? I was talking to Josh before the show, and he's actually driven by the plot, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I can't like drive into Star Wars Land.
Yeah.
But like the way that it's the way that like Disneyland Drive is like if you're going south, on your right hand side will be the Mickey and Friends parking lot. On your left hand side is basically where Critter Country and what Star Wars Land will be is. So you can see like the construction happening. A lot of people like when they go to Disneyland, or if you see like YouTube footage of like Disneyland or Star Wars Land under construction, it's from the top of the parking lot because it just looks directly down onto it over the road. And so as I drive by, you could see like the building being built, and there's a couple of buildings being infrastructurally built, but then you just see what can only be presumed as feet for an AT-AT. And then just a few days ago, like I think right after Josh and I had talked, or maybe the same day that Josh and I had talked about this, Disney put out a video.
It was
that
the
basically
next
said
morning.
like it was the next morning.
Yeah, the next morning I wake up and I look at my phone and I'm like, it's like Disney released that video. And it was pretty awesome.
Just a small 15-second video, like where it kind of like had a picture of what's there and then built it up, and then the head moved on the AT-AT and it shot a blast. And we've kind of been discussing this like on our own of like if Disney is building this and it is going to move, it will be the most massive animatronic project they've ever taken on.
Yeah.
Is that what we assume it is at this point? An animatronic project? Not like
just possibly the head.
Yeah.
But the reasoning for the head moving could possibly lead to the idea that like in the evenings in Star Wars Land, there may be some kind of like show where there's a battle, or there might be like a light show or something else, and that's the reason for the head to move, is so that the lighting in it can move and sway with it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I've heard it like a few different ways, because no one's exactly sure what's going on other than that like 15-second video. But some people are saying that they're going to be placing multiple throughout the land, or they're going to be placing multiple types of vehicles that might do that during a nighttime spectacular of some sort. They have maybe projectors in there, or lasers, a bunch of stuff. They have so much stuff coming out, and we could go forever about the technology that they could fit in those gigantic bodies. But as far as that little teaser goes, it looks like they were indoors. So I'm wondering, is that part of the ride? The battle escape ride?
It could be, or they could also be, which I don't know if they would. This is kind of far-fetched, but if they decided to turn the Jedi Training Academy into kind of a proper show and put it in its own little theater, round theater thing, that it could be a part of that in some way.
That would be interesting.
And that, you would have kind of this little small amphitheater where like you could sit down and watch the Jedi Training Academy thing. And then, this AT-AT like moves down over when like Darth Vader comes out or something similar. Mm-hmm. That might be a possibility as well if it's indoors. Even if it's outdoors, I think that, you know, like putting that into a show either as a nighttime thing or as like the Jedi training, worth it.
Like if Jedi training turned almost into like a water world type thing, that would be really cool. That'd be really interesting. Be more of a water world, longer type show. But my big question is that does this mean that they're going back to the Galactic Civil War with Imperials? Because those aren't, we haven't seen First Order walkers. We haven't seen First Order AT-ATs. And those are Imperial AT-ATs. So what are we seeing in these lands? And they've also said that there are 2 lands. They've announced this now, that it's going to be 2 different lands. But it's always going to be Star Wars, of course. So the question is one of them going to be sequel trilogy and the other one's going to be original trilogy? Or if there's going to be some mixture between them? It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do.
I think right now the idea is there might be like kind of an old world and a new world. Mm-hmm. My personal belief and what I think they should do, something I brought up to you before, is that I think it would be really great to take on this idea of a junkyard.
Oh, yeah.
Similar to like, you know, Rey living within kind of this junkyard in Force Awakens. Like being able to go to this place that's kind of made up of a junkyard. There's like a cantina restaurant there or whatever that they're gonna have, but then like everything around it is just kind of like junked, and that could make the reasoning for like having older stuff and newer stuff in the same place. Mm-hmm. And then at the, you know, like the second land being more of this kind of like a setup for a larger attraction. But, like the junkyard just makes sense, and it'd be so easy to do, and like the story would be so easy to do instead of having to explain why new stuff is mixed with old stuff. Because I think people of younger generations will want to see stuff from the newer movies.
Yeah, definitely.
People of the older generation are people that grew up loving, you know, A New Hope, all the way through Return of the Jedi, will want to see that's their Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So how do we kind of combine all of that together? I think the junkyard idea is the best idea, but that's just me, and it's far-fetched.
Yeah, but I mean, or there could be time travel.
No.
Yes, that's going to be the big thing in episode 8. They're going to introduce time travel.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to our next piece of news. Just that the Rogue One digital release is on Friday, March 24th. And that's close. This release is on Wednesday.
When's the hard copy? It's April 4th, right?
Yeah.
April 4th. Yeah, I like having the disc.
Yeah,
so
it's
I'm
nice.
Just gonna wait.
It's usually the digital comes about 2 weeks prior. Mm-hmm. But I think like when you buy the digital, you have the option to also like you pre-order the hard copy, right? So like you can get the digital by also pre-ordering the hard copy, so you can have both. And I don't know how much that expense is more, but like if you're looking to really watch Rogue One quicker, I mean, that's always an option. But yeah, I'm the same way. I like always having like the physical piece.
Yeah, I usually like doing both. I like, because
so you do exactly what they want you to do. You buy it twice.
Yeah, exactly. No, because for Force Awakens, I literally waited for like the second I could download it on Vudu, and it was pretty awesome. And now you can do it on like Amazon Video and iTunes and stuff too. But yeah, so you can find that, you can pre-order that on Amazon, and you can go through our website. We have an Amazon portal on our website. You can pre-order the hard copy, or you can pre-order or purchase the digital copy or anything else, and it'll help us out. It gives us a percentage just for commission and doesn't cost you anything extra. You can find that at StarWarsAfterHours.com. You can also go to audibletrial.com/Star Wars After Hours and get 30-day free trial and a free audiobook. And if you cancel, you get to keep that audiobook. And anyways, Stefan, you're looking at me like you're half dead right now.
That was just very smooth. That was very smooth.
Was it?
Very smooth and very subtle. No, not really. Yeah, great way to support us without doing anything extra. So I think that's all the news we have. Me and Josh will probably do a little. We had a very exciting and divisive episode of Rebels.
Oh yes.
Which me and Josh I think are going to cover in a separate, maybe a bonus episode.
Sure.
Because we're talking to Josh Taylor right now.
Yes.
And so we're gonna focus on his speciality.
And also I'm not caught up on Rebels, so I couldn't be a part of this fight.
You really need to. You need to just watch all of it.
I'll just get caught up totally.
Just right now. I'm gonna press pause on this recording.
Press pause and then I'll catch up and we'll be back. Yeah,
sure. We'll do that. It'll be cool.
So, Mr. Josh Taylor, why don't you tell our listeners kind of what it is you like about Star Wars and how you got into Star Wars?
I like Star Wars, and I didn't get into it quite a bit later. As a kid, I liked Star Tours when I went to Disneyland, and I didn't see Star Wars in order the way that everybody was supposed to see it. I didn't see 3, 4, and then, I didn't see 4, 5, and then 6. Mm-hmm. I saw, I think I saw Return of the Jedi first as a little kid, and then I saw Episode 1 in the theater. So that's the basis you have to go off of me.
Yeah.
But when I got out of high school and there were all these box sets that I wanted, and I really got into film and kind of studying film and what made movies great. And I had a Christmas that I asked for when I was, I think, 18. I asked my parents for 3 box sets. I regret one of them. I asked for the Indiana Jones trilogy. I asked for the Star Wars original trilogy, and I asked for the Jurassic Park trilogy because I don't know why. Why did you need 2 and 3, Josh? But but one of the things that I wanted to do in January was really lay down in bed. This is when I had my own place and I had a TV in my bedroom, and every night I watched a movie, and then I would watch I'd watch all 3 of the movies, and then I watched the documentary that came with them. Mm-hmm. And the one that blew me away was the Star Wars documentary that came with episode 4, 5, and 6. Immediately I had to go buy episodes 1, 2, and 3. I watched the documentary that went with those, but so I watched the Indiana Jones, the Star Wars, the Jurassic Park, and then I watched the prequels, and I still am blown away with how much went into Star Wars, things that we take for granted now in filmmaking, right? Merchandising, was not heard of for films until George Lucas made the deal of oh yeah, well, I'll give up this as long as I can get the merchandising rights. And nobody batted an eye at him because they thought he was just a mad scientist, crazy person. Right. And then he made just a ton of money on t-shirts. Mm-hmm. And to be able to do and create the industrial light stuff, which would turn into Pixar.
Yeah.
Or like would be, like a part of Pixar in that way. And like all of the things that combined together in the original Star Wars trilogy that George Lucas created in a very short span of time, right? Like this is like a 5-year span of time, completely changed how films are made forever.
Yeah.
Like at that point. And it's amazing that like that still stands true. Like things that we love today in film is because of what Star Wars gave us and what George Lucas presented in a very short span of time.
Right. He was a true visionary, and I think that got him into trouble in the prequel era, but for 4, 5, and 6, he was so far ahead of everything and everyone and just did so much that we'd never seen before. And it was great.
But it's funny how they went about doing certain things. They're kind of more unorthodox. They didn't do it in the certain ways that other people were making films at that time.
Right. And he kept that up and continued doing that, and it led to some of the cheesiness and, ridiculousness of the prequel trilogy. But
a lot of people give him like this grief for the line like faster and more intense, right? Like a lot, like the idea that like the only direction he gave his actors were like, great, do it faster and more intense next time. And like all the actors make a joke out of it now. But I do think the faster paced filmmaking, the faster dialogue, and like kind of the faster cuts in sequences in film happened directly because of that style of directing, right? Like films were such a slower pace, and even action films were such at a slower pace previous to Star Wars. And we've seen that like pick up even faster now. When you look at A New Hope and then you look at Force Awakens or Rogue One, you're like, wow, the action in this is really slow and there's a lot of dialogue. But like, just imagine at that time in 1977, that was the fastest paced action movie that was coming out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and especially if you look at like Empire Strikes Back, because it's action packed from the top.
And it moves even faster.
Yeah. So George Lucas he's the man.
True visionary.
Yes.
In his heyday.
Yes.
And I think that that's true with a lot of people. A lot of people have this creative spark. You look at like, in terms of Disney, you look at like Michael Eisner, right? Like he had this like creative spark that lasted only a short few years, where like everything was great. Everything coming from his studio was great. And by the early 2000s, his reign was kind of becoming lackluster, and like everybody was thinking his ideas were crazy and he'd almost gone too far. Like when you're given praise for your creativity, you need to also learn, which some people that are creative don't learn, is that you also need to be able to know when to hold back or when to like give up on something and move on. George Lucas is a perfect example of that kind of creative, where he was very creative, moved everything forward, and then he kept on being creative to the point where he tried to like fix things and tried to make things better, even by looking back at the old films and being like, I can make these better. I know how. I'll just digitally add in a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And then like the ideas kept getting like weirder and weirder, and somebody needed to, or he needed to have self discipline to say like, okay, I need to hold back and wait until a really good idea comes along. Like, don't just pursue every idea.
Yeah, put a little mouse here. Like,
right.
Just go in on that mouse, stop on it for a second. We're gonna watch it jump around, and then speeder. Okay, now we're on Tatooine. It's like that. It's such a stupid little addition. It's like, oh, I have to show the animals.
Right.
Oh,
like, why?
Okay.
Why? Like, there was too much thought going on in his head as a creative person. He needed to kind of stop and realize maybe this is all. Maybe it's fine as it is. Maybe we don't need to like move things in this direction or whatever it may be. But he was very brilliant for a very short period of time, and that's really, I think, what matters in the long run of the Star Wars legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I guess was kind of a tangent on.
Yeah, it kind of went off from
your Star Wars history.
personal.
I think we kind of derailed it.
No, so
But-
Josh appreciates the filmmaking aspect.
Right. I definitely appreciate the filmmaking. I appreciate the story. I definitely do. I grew up loving mythology. A weird story, off topic again. But when I was in high school, I wanted to be different. We had like this, I went to this high school where there were no baseball hats. You could wear any headwear. And for whatever reason, like, I don't know why, but I thought, well, okay, this is different. And then everybody was kind of dressing the same. Everybody was like wearing either t-shirts or wearing like, I don't know, whatever, jeans, whatever. And like, I wanted to be so different and so eccentric. I started wearing just like slacks all the time. And then I paired those with Hawaiian shirts.
Nice, dude.
Every day.
Nice.
Daily.
I was way John Lasseter before John Lasseter was John Lasseter. But I was like wearing Hawaiian shirts every day. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to like get into this, I might as well know a little bit about like Hawaiian culture, not just like wear some stupid shirt. And so I actually read like this book on Hawaiian mythology, Polynesian mythology, and then I kind of got into like Greek and Roman and Norse gods and all these kind of mythologies. And then like again, like after high school, I realized like all these stories really meant something and were interesting, and I wanted to know why. And then like Star Wars fits into that mythology, and George Lucas will tell you like he stole a lot of the ideas or borrowed a lot of the ideas from mythology and classic fairy tales, where there needs to be the hero and then the anti-hero and then the damsel in distress and the villain and so on. And all the basic ideas of storytelling are there from mythology that he continued to use in Star Wars. And so I definitely like appreciated that going into Star Wars again and actually watching them all.
Mm-hmm.
And I still love that, even in the new films.
Yeah, and I like in the new films that they're actually going back and referencing the films that George Lucas himself said that he got his ideas from.
Yeah,
like
that's so cool.
Like the Seven Samurai and stuff like that, all the Kurosawa films and different World War II era films and stuff, that they're actually going back to that and basing, Rogue One, Episode 8, Episode 9 on the things that George Lucas based 4, 5, and 6 on, basically.
Right.
So, Josh Combs, do you want to kick us off on our Star Wars history topic for the day, our main topic?
Yeah, that kind of leads us right into the history of the relationship between Lucasfilm and Disney.
And this is exactly why we brought on Josh Taylor, because Josh Taylor is a history buff for Disney, and he's super into all the dates and kind of understanding the relationship between the two. So we thought this was the perfect episode to have him on for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think so for sure.
On July 17th, 1955, a young George Lucas ran through the gates of Disneyland, and I'm sure that he went on Peter Pan's flight and felt how it was like to go through space.
Was that it? That was the awesomeness that became Star Wars?
And that is the awesomeness that became Star Wars. No, but I mean, I think that he had a lot of experiences in Disneyland. He has said himself that he got a lot of influences from Disney.
So George was there on opening
He was
day?
there on opening day.
Wow, okay.
And though Tomorrowland wasn't anything close to how it is now or anything close to how it was in the 60s, I'm sure that he enjoyed that. And so let's fast forward to 1971 when George Lucas starts Lucasfilm, and their first film was American Graffiti in 1973, and the second, of course, Star Wars in 1977. And I'm sure after a while he might have thought that it would be a good fit for Disneyland.
Well, what were some of the influences for Star Wars?
He had a ton of influences, and that ranges from, old 1930s to 1950s science fiction, all the way to like, Japanese films, samurai films. That was a huge part of it, samurai films, and I think we should have a whole episode on Kurosawa and talk about all that. And maybe we'll have Josh on for that because you're into film stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think like when you talk about his early years too, like you have to think about like what was popular at that time between like when he was born all the way up until he starts making films. And like when you look at like the 50s, like the 40s and 50s, you've got to look at like monster movies. And then you look at like kind of the atomic age kind of films as well going on there. You look at like what was popular on television, like The Twilight Zone, Buck Rogers, stuff like that. And like all those influences. And then like, yeah, you get into the 70s, you start getting into Kurosawa and some of the Japanese stuff, as well as some of the more like what people would consider like experimental film. Like all that stuff has to kind of come together, right? In one person's idea. He didn't love like just one genre. He loved like all of these genres for everything and kind of put them all together in one.
Yeah, and George Lucas has his hand in so many things, throughout history that you'd have no idea that Lucasfilm had a part in dealing with. And it's really, really interesting. But I say we get into one really interesting thing that he did with Michael Jackson.
Yeah. In 1984, he was approached because of Michael Jackson by Disney, which is such a weird sentence to say. It really is. So in 1984, Michael Eisner took over the Disney company as its CEO. And one of the things that he really wanted to push was to make sure that Disneyland wasn't like just a children's place, but it was a family place and also a cool place that teenagers could be. As it's always been kind of a local park and a tourist park in one. And so he decided the best thing they could do was offer something to Michael Jackson because Thriller had been such a huge part of the early 1980s. Jackson, being such a huge Disneyland fan and a big film fan, thought that this would be awesome. He could sing a song, they could make a little movie, and put it into his favorite place to hang out. Because at that time, Michael Jackson was going to Disneyland probably 12 to 24 times a year.
Wow.
Nice.
And I mean, it was his favorite place to hang out, and it's the reason why when he built his own home, he built the Neverland Ranch, which was somewhat inspired by Disney. But he said when he sat down with Michael Eisner that he thinks the best way to make this is if George Lucas is involved. And because of that, because of Michael Eisner's background from Paramount and film production, Paramount being working with George Lucas on Indiana Jones, he knew George Lucas, got him involved, also got Francis Ford Coppola involved, and Captain EO became such a huge success at Disneyland, opening up in 1984. And it really sparked this idea of like working with outsiders for Disneyland and for all the Disney parks. Up until then, they hadn't worked with anybody from the outside. And now having this relationship with George Lucas after the opening of the Captain EO show in 86, there were some ideas of like what else could work for Disneyland. And Tony Baxter, legendary Imagineer now, came up with this idea that Star Tours would work. Star Wars would be a great thing to do. And this was even a further leap because it wasn't just talking about like a musician coming in and making an attraction for Disneyland. We were talking about an entirely different film company, Lucasfilm, an entirely different film director and complete visionary, completely separate from Disney, coming in and creating something for Disney that wasn't necessarily a Disney product to begin with. This is the first time it had ever been done. And so Tony Baxter went to Marty Sklar. Marty Sklar, who was the head of Disney Imagineering at the time, said, this is too big of a concept for me to even sign off on. So you'll need to go to Michael Eisner. Eisner agreed. They got in Lucas. And, I mean, like, the turnaround for the idea from Captain EO to Star Tours was so quick because they got both attractions up within a year of each other. And that's kind of how, like, the Tomorrowland of the 1980s really, like, sparked and grew. And really became more of, like, this space age Tomorrowland rather than kind of like this earthly world of tomorrow, because you had Captain EO and Star Tours all come in at the same time and were based in kind of outer space. And that's how we now look at Tomorrowland as this more space age vibe going on over at Disneyland. And of course, Star Tours then got built over in Disney World, and Captain EO went over there as well. And Star Tours continued to go into other parks from there on out. It was so popular.
Yeah, and this year is the 20th anniversary, right? Or 30th. The
30th anniversary of the original Star Tours, yep.
Wow. Yeah, I've been going on that ride since I was very little, and I think that is one of the things that did contribute to me loving Star Wars, because it really immerses you in Star Wars.
Great ride. Classic ride. Definitely.
And then they've updated it over and over again, and it's even better. I'm excited to see what they do next with the episode 8. I think they're putting in an episode 8 scene pretty soon, so that should be cool to see.
So are they going to move that, or is that going to stay?
That is up for debate.
Yeah.
I think what Disney would like to do, though, is to reimagine Tomorrowland back to the not space age time period of the 80s. So I think once Star Wars Land is done, we'll be moving all of the Star Wars stuff over there, and Tomorrowland will become its own thing again.
That makes sense. That makes the most sense.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that by 2019, Star Tours is going to be scrapped.
Scrapped as in moved, right?
No.
Scrapped as in scrapped?
Scrapped.
Ooh.
But the thing is that they're going to have things that are so much better that, like, you're not even going to miss Star Tours. Also, you can go to, like, 4 other Disney parks have it, or 3 other.
Correct, yeah, because Star Tours, this is not going to leave Hollywood Studios in Florida.
Right.
It's going to be integrated into the land.
Yeah, that's like the entrance, basically, right? Or one of the entrances.
Pretty much. So, and I think the idea with the Millennium Falcon attraction that's going to go in is that it's going to kind of replace that simulator ride. Mm-hmm. And so we'll probably be seeing Star Tours lose itself at Disneyland, but still be very popular at many of the other parks. And it'll be an exclusive, similar to how, we just lost the Hollywood Tower of Terror at Disneyland, but it still exists in other parks.
Right. Yeah, there's still 2 more of them, right? There's one in Paris and then the other one in Florida.
Yeah, and they have have a Hollywood Tower of Terror in Tokyo, but it's a different theme.
It's a different
as well.
theme, not Twilight Zone, but still it's the same.
Right,
same
it's still the Hollywood Tower of Terror.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess that kind of puts us into how Lucasfilm helped spark Pixar. So there's these 2 guys that a lot of people know as the founders of Pixar, Ed Catmull and Alvy Ray. And so they both worked together at New York Institute of Technology. And they basically, Ed Catmull created texture mapping and created the alpha channel and how to do basically 3-dimensional curved surfaces through a computer. And the stuff that they used back then, like just to render a single image, that piece of equipment would be like $50,000. And so this is crazy stuff that they started out with. So in 1979, George Lucas hired Ed Catmull as head of the computer division of Lucasfilm and Alvy Ray as the head of the graphics project at Lucasfilm. And because George Lucas had a really big trouble
He did.
What percentage was that beer?
13.
Sweet.
Had a really big trouble.
George Lucas had trouble with the optical compositing of the opening scene of Star Wars. It actually took them 8 months to composite the film for that, for the Star Destroyer running after the Tantive 4.
No way.
8 months. So Lucas was like, someone's got to figure this out. We're going to hire like the smartest computer guys that we can find. Get them on here so they can figure out how to make things. And that basically helped build the computer division at Lucasfilm and ILM. And it actually became the graphics group. Then their group later became known as Pixar after the Pixar image computer that they had. And then in 1986, George Lucas decided to sell his majority interest in technology rights of Pixar to a new investor, Apple co-founder Steve Jobs. But he kept Ed Catmull and Alvy Ray on as president and vice president, and so they managed Pixar. And the very first thing that Pixar did was for Disney, and that was trying to figure out how to make 2D animation compositing, basically. And then later on, that leads to Toy Story.
Toy Story, yeah.
And Cars and Finding Nemo and all that fun stuff. And then they were acquired by Disney. And so that's another little link between Lucasfilm and Disney. And then what happened, Stefan?
Well, so at this point, the seeds have been sown basically since George was a little kid in, what was it, 1955 that the park opened. He went there. He went there on opening day. So in regards to Star Wars going over to Disney, at this point in 2012, George is around 70 years old, and he had just come off the prequels. Episode 3 came out in 2005. He had outlines for a 7, 8, and 9, but he got creamed for the prequels so bad that it was almost like his confidence was gone, and he had the outlines, but he had no desire to actually make the movies. And he thought that Disney would be basically the perfect partner to kind of carry on the franchise, and he ended up selling them on October 30th, 2012 for $4.05 billion.
Wow.
Billion. Yeah, and the very next day, October 31st, Disney announced that we would have a 7, 8, and 9. So they knew they wanted this. I think they kind of had it in the works for a while. They saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, they've been ready.
With George, and they jumped at it, and they took it there in 2012. Now, as far as the relationship after that gets a little dicey and a little weird. George did this interview with Charlie Rose about episode 7, and he didn't like episode 7. He didn't really keep that a secret, which is interesting. He said, Disney wanted to do a retro movie. I don't like that. Every movie I worked very hard to make completely different, with different planets, with different spaceships, to make it new. And he goes on to compare, like, George had all these, he was like antiquated at this point, and like I said earlier, he had the outline for 7, 8, and 9, and he brought it to Disney after selling it, and they wanted to go in their own direction. They basically said thanks but no thanks, like, we're gonna make a film for the fans, and we're gonna kind of do our own thing. They thought that his creativity had run its course, and they were just gonna go in a totally new direction. And so after that, George is like, he does this interview with Charlie Rose, and he's comparing them to like slave owners and like saying all this crazy stuff, which he retracted. But I mean, the damage is kind of done at that point. It's a weird thing because George, like, this is his baby, this and Indiana Jones, and like it's from his mind, and it became so successful, and to have somebody else tell you that they don't want your ideas anymore and that they're going to go in a different direction. I mean, I'm sure it was hard for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, the writing was kind of on the wall for that. But for Rogue One, he did come around. He told Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards was talking to. It was a press day for Rogue One. And Gareth Edwards said, "I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I can honestly say that I can die happy now. George really liked the movie, so it meant a lot. No offense to anyone here, but it was the most important review for me. You guys are important too, but he's kind of God. I will take that conversation to my grave. It was a real privilege. His opinion means the world to me." So it's kind of a bittersweet story. Like, George, ever since he was young, the seeds were sown, and he kind of like postured to eventually sell off to Disney. And when it happened, and what he wanted for the franchise, even though he didn't own it anymore, wasn't taken into consideration, the relationship definitely soured a bit. But it sounds like he's coming back around. But it's understandable, you know. That's his baby. That's his brainchild.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when you move somewhere else and then someone moves into that house and you kind of like secretly don't like them because they took your house.
Even though it
was your choice to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because I was driving around with my parents like a couple months ago, and we drove by this house we used to live in. My dad was like, "Oh my gosh, look what they did to the front yard. They chopped down all the trees and it's so ugly now." And it's like, yeah, that's funny, man.
That's exactly that.
Yeah,
your dad's George Lucas and that house is Star Wars.
Yeah.
So, and you know, George Lucas is, I mean, he's an old man.
Yeah, he said, so he had the outline, right? And he said, you know, to do it right, it's going to take 10 years. And he said, "I don't know if I'm going to make it till I'm 80, you know. Something could always happen." And that's one of the reasons he sold it off. Because, I mean, he's old. He's an old dude. He didn't have the energy, I think, both physically and with all the crap he got for the prequels to go through.
But luckily there were so many people still working with Lucasfilm that have continued with Lucasfilm under Disney that have kept it, you know, close to how it was supposed to be. Like Kathleen Kennedy, like she's been around with Lucasfilm for years and years, since Return of the Jedi. And so we still have those old links to the original Lucasfilm, and I think that's really what is helping Disney the most to get to the core of George Lucas without George Lucas.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right, no.
Because there's people like even Dave Filoni, especially Dave Filoni, he worked very closely with George Lucas on the Clone Wars originally. And then all of that stuff, he pulls out ideas from the talks that they had, and he'll talk about it on like the the Rebels after shows and stuff. How certain things that they talked about originally made it into Rebels and are continuing to make it in there. So even though his story outlines for the sequel trilogy were thrown out, there's still parts that are being thrown in there from like the first draft of the Star Wars.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll pick and pull if there's any really good ideas in there, but yeah, he was just upset that after he sold it, they kind of didn't want anything to do with him.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense, because where would he be? It's kind of like Darth Plagueis and Emperor Palpatine. He had no use for Plagueis anymore.
Exactly. Disney had no use for George Lucas anymore.
So they lightninged him to death.
Yeah, so they did that.
No, not really. But yeah, I heard that that he did make some contributions for Rogue One, coming up with different ideas for the helmet for the tank driver. I think Gareth Edwards said that George Lucas came up with a different idea of giving him a different helmet. So, yeah, I don't know how big of a difference that made, but I'm sure there were more little things, but...
Way to go, George. You...
I don't know what the
I'm
alternative
sure there are little
would be.
things that like he does nitpick at.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this could be better. You know, I feel like that's his mind mentality. Like, he'll focus in or narrow in on something and not necessarily see the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I don't know George Lucas, so I'm just stereotyping him.
Yeah.
But like, I think that he would focus in on something like that to a T, and focus on it for like months to get like one helmet right.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the problems with having George Lucas on there, is that they couldn't turn over a film every year.
Exactly.
There's no way, because he
no one
would
has
want
the
his hand
patience
everywhere.
to do a film the way that George Lucas would want to do a film.
And not very many people have the patience to do a film with George Lucas.
Right.
You know. But, you know, that kind of leads us to the future. Well, I guess the present of Disney and Lucasfilm without George Lucas. And it's going really well.
Yeah, so far it is. And I said this on your podcast you had us on for a guest.
On Disney Culture Club?
Yeah, Disney Culture Club. But I was very, very nervous when I heard that Disney bought the rights to Star Wars, because at that point all we had to really go off of was the Marvel movies, for like the modern day Disney and how they were going to handle a whole universe,
Yeah,
the Marvel universe. Right. But those are cool action films. But Star Wars means more to a lot of people than just like being a cool action film. There's a lot of stuff there, emotionally, and like mysticism and this whole vibe that you can't just satisfy with some cool action sequences.
Yeah.
So I was worried that they wouldn't be totally respectful of that, but The Force Awakens was great. Lots of cool lore there, and Rogue One was, I think, what a lot of people wanted for a long time out of a Star Wars film.
Yeah, and I think that we would have never gotten that from George Lucas. Yeah, no, and it made Episode 4 so much better. It took the dumbest thing about Episode 4 and made
fixed it.
Yeah, and fixed it, which was just such a brilliant like masterstroke almost.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have this gaping design flaw? Oh, because it was put there on purpose by somebody who was held hostage by the Empire. It's like,
but really, it's not that stupid, because you think of the size of that hole and the entire size of that thing. It's like the size of a moon, and then what is the hole is the size of a womp rat. What is a womp rat? That's like the size of a dog.
Yeah, but why does that one thing blow up the entire Death Star? That's stupid. You know what I mean? But no, it's that way on purpose.
Yeah. The reactor.
Yeah, so far I think they've done great, and I'm so excited that we just have Star Wars again. We have stuff coming out. We have just content that's going to get pumped out every year at this point.
And we know it's going past 2020. We know it's going to be going pretty much forever, as far as we know.
They want, yeah.
Yeah, indefinitely at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, they have, like we talked about, the Star Wars lands coming into the parks. And you never know if in the future maybe they'll put Star Wars lands or entire Star Wars theme parks in different parts of the world. Like, they could add a third gate to Paris and make that an entire Star Wars park. Now that would be insane.
Yes.
And they could do that probably in maybe 10 years. They can make a whole different Star Wars experience. There's a lot.
That's true.
A lot of opportunities there.
they're adding a lot to outside of the theme parks. They're adding like a lot of Star Wars to the cruise line.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see them potentially doing, Adventures by Disney kind of thing, or even like kind of what Alani is, like a standalone just resort, like doesn't have a theme park, but just a standalone resort, and continuing that kind of theming into a Star Wars standalone resort somewhere. I would assume probably like outside of London.
That would be really cool.
Because of the sound stages there, or like in Los Angeles.
Yeah. That would be crazy.
That'd be crazy. Yeah, that'd be great.
A Star Wars resort.
I guess off the cuff here, Josh, we'll let you get out of here. We'll close with what excites you most going forward about the combination of Disney and Star Wars, whether it be the amount of content we're going to get, the quality of content, Star Wars Land. What is it that makes you guys like look to the future and go, yeah, we're in good hands. This is going to be awesome.
I think that's, you can look at Walt Disney the same way that you look at George Lucas. A lot of people still, to this day, it's been over 50 years since Walt Disney passed away, and people still think, what would Walt Disney think of this, or what would Walt Disney want this to be, or whatever. And like, because of that, even though it's not directly correlated to that, because Walt Disney is a figurehead, and because people admire him and love him, that they still love the Disney company, and the Disney company still moves forward with Walt Disney in mind. I think the same can be said about Star Wars now. Like, if George Lucas were to pass away and he wouldn't have sold to Disney, what would have happened to Lucasfilm or the Star Wars brand? Would it have died? I'm not sure, but it would have been more likely if he had not sold to Disney. I think Disney understands the care and love for Star Wars that a lot of people have. And that George has for the brand. I mean, like, he's so into it that he like what a helmet looked like matters. Yeah. So that's something that it's like, now I think they'll move on into the future, whether or not George Lucas is around, and people will still think like, okay, like George Lucas is this figurehead. He'll be somebody we look to when we think about Star Wars. What would he think of this, or what would he want to do, or what would make him happy going forward? Knowing that the content will still move on, knowing that there will be more Star Wars and we'll be growing this universe, George Lucas will still probably be a figurehead in that, regardless of if he's alive or not. And I think that's something that's really cool that I feel is being acknowledged moving forward.
Yeah, it's like they're always like, what would George do? And going back to like, oh, this time we talked to George, this is what he said. Okay, then we can spin off of that idea.
So a constant pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, and it is the same thing as with Walt Disney.
And I think innovation in the same way. There is like a huge similarity between Walt and George Lucas that I think you can easily put together, and I think that Disney is the kind of company that will continue to evolve and grow the Star Wars universe and innovate and still find time to look back and think like, what would George have done, or what would George Lucas want us to do?
And what other, Disney property right now has so much immersion as Star Wars? I can't think of anything else that they can take for basically forever. They can take that universe and build off of it with any medium, any story that they want. They can pull characters off of the old stuff, or which they just recently said that they're not going to be relying on the legacy characters for the next movies to come. Yeah. So just having that whole universe laid out rather than building off of that story, I think is the best thing that Disney has from Star Wars to work off of. You know, they already have that universe is laid out, and they can just keep building on it and filling in cracks and stuff like that, and that people will always want to keep going to Star Wars.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's always a pleasure talking to you and Dale. We love Network 1901 and what you guys do over there. And getting Josh interested in podcasting so that we could, eventually do our own here. And that's one of the things that got all this started. So we are eternally grateful to you guys. And we hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks again for coming on. It was a lot of fun, and thank you for all your great insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Why don't you just let us know where everyone can find you?
Easiest thing to do is to go to network1901.com. It's kind of the landing page for all of our videos and podcasts, and all of our social links are there. But you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, which are kind of our main three social networks. You can find us at Network 1901 on all of those, and you can chat with us there about anything. We're always up for a discussion. And then, make sure to check out Modern Mouse Radio on Wednesdays, the Disney Culture Club's on Mondays, and then we always have a rotating show on Fridays on our podcast feed. Discovering Star Wars just ended all 10 episodes of the first season. Maybe there'll be a season 2 of that. Are all there, so you can listen to that and get your Star Wars fix there. And then The World That Never Was, my other show, will be coming back in May on Fridays.
Awesome. I'm really excited for that one. Definitely going to be listening to those. And I'm excited to see the rest of your in-park videos. And hopefully we can come down there and hang out with you guys at the park.
Yes. You know we're going to be doing a big Star Wars Land blowout special when that comes out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, buddy.
For sure.
We'll let you get going. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. It's been fun, buddy.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Star Wars After Hours. As promised, we are going to pick the winner for this month's collectible figure giveaway for the 6-inch Black Series Princess Leia Organa figure. Thank you, everyone, for your donations. We really appreciate it. And the winner is Vincent Valenzuela. Now, Vincent I have known for over 15 years, and he is a pretty cool guy. I will get a hold of you to find out your address so we can send that over to you. Thank you, everyone else, for donating. Thank you to Robin and Colin and Dante. And we have some other anonymous donations that really helped out a lot. We were able to buy a mixer and new microphones, some microphone stands, pop filters, some fun stuff like that. We still have some more needs, and we will have another monthly giveaway. We will announce that on our next episode. So thank you guys for listening. If you would like to help us out, you can go to audibletrial.com/Star Wars After Hours, and you get a free trial, 30 days, and that gives you a free audiobook as well. And if you cancel before the end of the trial, you still get to keep that audiobook. You can listen to thousands of books, over 100 Star Wars books, including the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendig, Darth Plagueis by James Luceno, and the upcoming novel Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. That'll be coming out April 11th, a day after my birthday. So thank you guys for listening. You can find us on Instagram at Star Wars After Hours, Twitter at SW After Hours, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Find all of our links at StarWarsAfterHours.com. We will see you next week. We'll be talking about this last half of Star Wars Rebels Season 3. It's a very controversial episode, especially because of the ending of the Twin Sons episode. So stay tuned for that. We will be going through that and explaining both sides of the arguments, and we'll see what happens with that. So thank you guys for listening again. May the Force be with you.
He's no good to me dead.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Do you know what's going on?